Okay. I think we got everybody I think is going to make it. I'm sure there's maybe a few stragglers who's going to come in. So I'll introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pastor Stewart. I'm the pastor at First Baptist Church in Auburn. I've been here for about 15 years. I know Boaz because I've been on, I believe, 6 tours with Boaz. So I'm sure he remembers all of them. There's so many.
And we're still friends.
And we're still friends. That's the amazing thing after all of that time. But I have a great appreciation for Boaz and the perspective he brings from the Jewish people. We always want to help out our Jewish brothers and friends over in Israel. And I'm sure he has some things to share with you that are only going to enlighten your thinking when it comes to the world. Obviously, a lot of the news we get is filtered and is slanted in one direction, and it's not a good direction. So it's our hope that we can learn from our friends over there on the ground. And I'll let Boaz kind of introduce himself. He can tell you a little bit about himself and his company and then what's happening currently.
Okay, Pastor Stewart, thank you so much. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give you an introduction, like Stewart said, about myself, about the situation in Israel. And right away, we'll plunge into Q&A because the lecture will work best with you asking me questions and me answering you, because this way, we are going to cover the things that you don't know and you want to know rather than me talking for an hour. So, Stuart, are you going to be the one collecting the questions?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
If you guys have a question, put it in the chat, and then I'll try and insert it at points during the conversation to make sure that Boaz knows what's going on. He can't see the questions, so at least I don't think you can. Maybe you can, but if
No, and in any event, I'm a man, so I cannot do two things at the same time. So I'll be
okay, fair enough.
focusing on talking.
Fair enough. So if you
Oh,
put it in the chat, I'll make sure that Boaz answers it. I got some my own questions that I'll throw in there, but go ahead and start, and then we'll start asking some questions.
okay, folks. So again, good morning from Israel. Good evening to you guys in California. My name is Boaz Shalgi. I'm 56 years old, born and raised in Jerusalem. Served in the Israeli army in the special forces for 3 years. Was on reserves for many more years. Was discharged at the age of 40. I'm married to Maggie, who is originally from Sweden, but many, many years ago, she came to Israel. She converted to Judaism. We have 3 kids. Our oldest is Danielle, who is 27. She is the only one who's married. And Stuart, the good news that we were told a week ago is that she is pregnant.
Oh,
So
hey, congratulations.
yeah, soon I'm gonna be a grandpa, but I insist. I told her and I told everyone they should call me Uncle Boaz. I'm not ready for the title grandpa yet.
No Grandpa
So
Boaz?
my 2 sons are Itamar, who is 26, and Itamar is the name of one of the sons of Aaron the priest in the Bible. And our youngest is Elijah, who has just finished his military service not long ago. Very, very tough military service. He served in Hebron, in Gaza. He's been through things that you don't want to know about. And a few days ago, he flew with a couple of friends to India. He just wanted to go far away, something that I totally understand and relate to. He's going to be there 5 weeks and then come back. He was already notified by the army that they'll call him up again because Israel is ready now for a big, big project, so to speak, in Lebanon. So you can understand we have lots of nights with no sleep and very tense, and we're very worried about him. So that's a little bit about my family. We live in the Upper Galilee. As I'm talking to you right now, I am only 7 miles from Lebanon and about 10 miles from Syria. Whenever there's explosions, bombings, any kind of violence in the area of the north, we're the first ones to notice that. As a matter of fact, a lot of what I send to the Israeli TV channels and they show it on television because we're the first one to see all these things. Regarding what happened, the reason why we're here today is October the 7th. This is the day that was supposed to be a regular, ordinary Sabbath. My wife Maggie woke me up at 7 in the morning and said, Boaz, I think we're at war. And I said, what are you talking about? And then right away we switched on the television only to start understanding what is going on in the south of Israel. It took us a few days to fully understand, but these are things that it is still hard for us to digest. I mean, when I talk to you about events that happened almost 9 months ago, and I'm talking about Jewish people that were burned to death in their beds, in their homes, Jewish people, adults, babies, women, men that were beheaded, raped, kidnapped into Gaza. It just sounds like a horror movie, not reality, but that's what happened. In a few hours, 3,000 Palestinian Hamas terrorists invaded into Israel and simply butchered, killed, raped everyone, anyone that was in their way. Soldiers, civilians, everyone. Speaking about my son, definitely I can say that God has protected him, and not only one time, but more than that. When he was in Hebron a year and a half ago, after a mission that took all night, they were leaving Hebron, and as soon as he came out of the building where they were, terrorists from up above, from the rooftop, threw a big rock right on top of his head. And thank God he had his helmet on that saved his life. But even with the helmet, he was seriously injured. And then a few months before October the 7th, on April of 2023, Elia was stationed with his unit exactly in that base where many of these atrocities took place. And I remember I called him and I said, Elia, I'm coming to visit you today, even though it's a long journey from Galilee. And he said, no, but Dad, don't worry about it. It's really boring here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to the beach of Gaza, believe it or not, with a couple of friends. And he even sent me photos from there. And I said, okay, whatever you say. Just that turned to be that Hamas designed their attack to that day that Elia was in Gaza. So all the atrocities of October the 7th were actually planned for April, Passover of that year, and they canceled it last minute because they realized that there's more Israeli forces in the area that they expected, so they postponed it. But had they postponed it, I would have been without one of my children today, for sure, no doubt about it, because there were hardly any survivors from there once they launched their attack. A few days after everything happened, Israel engaged war, got into Gaza, and basically went on two big missions. One to destroy Hamas, and the other one is to try and get the hostages back. 250 were kidnapped into Gaza. 2 weeks into the war, there was a short ceasefire that we gave them in order to get back about 120 of our hostages. Later on, we were supposed to have another deal, but they broke it. They did not deliver what they were supposed to, so the war continued. And the long story short, right now there's 120 Israelis in Gaza. We estimate that about 50 of them are still alive. The others are dead. We have indications that most of them are dead. I even doubt it that 50 are still alive, but that's what they're saying. And the catch-22 here is that Israel wants to bring them back badly. And Hamas is begging for the end of the war badly. But the two things don't meet together because what we're saying to them, get us all the hostages back, we will stop the war. And they say, no, you stop the war first, and then we'll get them. But we have learned that you cannot trust Hamas. So Netanyahu, our prime minister, said, not going to happen. We'll keep the pressure on you until you'll be convinced that it's better for you to negotiate and bring them back. Otherwise, we'll just keep destroying you. We'll kill everyone that's there, that's holding weapons. And in the end, there's going to be no more Gaza. At the same time that this is happening, the northern border started to, I would say, set in fire as well, because Hezbollah, the big terror organization in Lebanon, said that as solidarity with their brothers in Gaza, they will open another frontier against Israel, which will not stop until we stop the war in Gaza. So right now we have two frontiers, and it seems like in about 2 or 3 weeks, the campaign in Gaza will slow down dramatically, and then most of the forces will go up north. And that's when probably a big war is going to start with Hezbollah, unless they'll agree to stop their violence and retreat about 10 miles from the border so there will not be a threat anymore to the Israeli communities. Just that you understand, and maybe they don't tell that on your news, as we speak, there's 100,000 Israeli refugees in Israel. 100,000 Israelis that had to leave their homes in the Galilee area because they're too close to the border and it is very unsafe for them to be there. So the Israeli government put them in different hotels all over Israel. But for those of you that have been to Israel, if you come now, you will not recognize Galilee because Galilee is a ghost town. Galilee is abandoned. Other than my community and a couple of others in the area, there's nobody there. Everyone is gone. And people also said, even if there's an agreement with Hezbollah, we are not coming back. We will only come back if Israel gets into Lebanon and gets it done. Otherwise, we don't trust them to be peaceful. And we're afraid that the October 7 atrocities in the south will also happen in the north. So right now, this is a promo to the situation. And from here on, Stuart, I'll start taking questions.
Okay. I'm trying to trying to figure that out. I'm going to ask you one just to prime the pump here. So what's the morale like in Israel? What are the people, how are they feeling right now about how things are? Are they encouraged that the war is going well or not well, or what's the kind of what's the temperature in the room in Israel? What are you guys as a people feeling like?
Okay, so I will say this, and I want everyone here to not be offended because you guys are our Christian brothers and sisters, and I know that everybody that's here supports Israel and the Jewish people. And I say that because our big challenge now, believe it or not, is the American administration. I cannot get into this topic without involving politics because it's part of it. Without Biden putting so much pressure on Israel, the war would have been over in Gaza in maximum of 4 to 6 weeks. The Israeli army is very strong, and we did not need more than a few weeks in Gaza. But ever since it started, a huge pressure came from Obama's administration. Don't invade into Gaza. Don't do this. Don't do that. There are civilians over there. You can't do this. You can't do that. And we were basically fighting there with our hands tied behind our back. And a lot of the ammunition that United States was supposed to ship in to us were delayed or did not come at all. You probably heard Netanyahu complaining about it. And it's the first time in our history that our biggest and best ally, which is the United States, is not really standing with Israel. I'm not talking about individuals because I know that most people in the United States support Israel, but I'm talking right now about the Biden administration and the pressure that he has in his own party, to be neutral, to not be pro-Israel, and the result is pretty bad. And same thing with Lebanon, what's keeping us, for a long time from ending the Lebanon campaign as well is Biden saying to us, don't dare do that, don't dare do that. This is going to break to a whole-out war. Well, of course, but Biden says that because of political reasons, because he wants quiet environment to be reelected. But for us, it's survival, and we need to make sure that we're safe over here. So we're kind of walking between the drops. We're trying to do what's good for us and at the same time also satisfy the American administration, which is not easy at all. So to your question, Stuart, what's the temperature? We're in good spirit. Our soldiers are amazing. We have the best army in the world, but things could have moved, much faster. We could have lost a lot less soldiers in the battlefield. But like I said, we don't have the liberty to do everything we need to.
Yeah, I understand. We're clearly not as frustrated with our president as you are, but we definitely feel that, and you have our deepest apologies. We wish we could help you and stop all of the bureaucracy. Um, what is the depth of the Iran's president done in terms of Israel, and how has that impacted you guys internationally?
It's working.
Is everyone hearing me? Because I see people.
Yeah, Phil, your microphone's on.
Yeah.
Phil and Sally, you're not muted, so we're picking you guys up. Oh, maybe you are.
No, they muted it. They muted it. Did you get that one, Boaz?
Yeah, I did. I just want to make sure that everybody hears me.
Yeah. So what's
Okay.
going on with? I know the Iranian president was killed in a helicopter accident, and the prime minister and a few of his aides. And how has that had an impact on what's been going on? I know Iran attacked you guys, and so I'm just curious how that's had an impact.
Okay, so unfortunately, it wasn't the Iranian president, it was the Iranian prime minister,
Oh,
who's
okay.
also in a very high rank, and that's always, that cannot be bad news. But the president of Iraq, Ali Khamenei, is still alive, and he is the only decision maker. That's the way it is in Iran since the Khomeinis got into power 40 some years ago. All the power, all the decisions, everything is concentrated in one man's hands, and that is their president, who is extremely fanatic. So yes, it was a big loss for them, but nothing that changes, the atmosphere or the approach towards Israel and the Middle East. So to your question, Stuart, it was not a game changer, although, like I said, it wasn't bad news at all. This is also, folks, time to say that what is happening here, to me, it is all biblical prophecies. Pastor Stuart knows me, and he knows how much I love the Bible, how much I love God. And, what we're seeing today is something that I already talked on my tours many, many years ago, that we're in the beginning of World War III. And, this may even be the end time war between Isaac and Ishmael that started 4,000 years ago. And today you see it. It's not only the Jewish people, but it is Islam versus the free world versus the West. So just that you know, you're next. I mean, I want you to wake up, and you are having wake-up calls because you see exactly what's happening in universities in America. You see what's happening in universities in New York, even in California, and all this rise of Islam over there is not only against Israel and the Jewish people. It's to change the world and to make the whole world a Muslim, Arab Muslim. And people who don't obey that, according to them, are the infidels, and they have to fight the infidels. Look at what's happening in Europe, same thing. So when I say World War III, it's obviously different from World War I and II because that started instantly, like in one day. This is not one day, this is a process over a few years, but you can see how it escalates all the time. And when you talk about God interfering in all this, then Stuart, back to your question, I don't see that as an accident. As soon as people start attacking Israel, all of a sudden helicopters fall from the air. All of a sudden, you shoot 350 missiles and rockets from Iran into Israel and not even one hits Israel. There's all kind of miracles that you can start seeing even now as we speak.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't know if they advertise this very well in Israel, but it was actually Pray for Israel Day when that helicopter went down. So
There you go.
there's God's providence in taking care of all of the enemies of Israel. Rob's going to jump in because I'm having a hard time looking at the chat and seeing what questions are in there. So he's going to ask you some of the questions from the chat.
Yeah, Boaz, it's really good to hear you and hear your voice. And my heart is broken for you guys. I can't even imagine what you're going through. Couple questions. One is, how much longer do you expect it to take to destroy Hamas if you haven't already effectively answered that question? And then the second one um, that I put out there was, have you heard from our Palestinian friend? I think his name was Johnny. Have you heard from him at all since this started?
Okay, so question number one, Benjamin Netanyahu came yesterday to the television station and was interviewed for about 45 minutes. And he also talked about, all these things that we're talking now. And he says that the war in Gaza will continue for maybe 3 or 4 weeks max, but that doesn't say the war is going to be over. It means that the intensity of the war, the way it is now, is going to be over, and then we'll reduce the amount of soldiers over there, because what we're going to do from there on is we'll have less soldiers in Gaza and we will send them on special missions, which means that when we have accurate information about a terrorist or a group of terrorists hiding somewhere, we'll send our soldiers after them. But it's not going to be the intense war that it is now, with tens of thousands of soldiers inside of the Gaza. And we also need to do that quickly because, like I said, what's heating up now is the northern border, and we need to make sure that we send most of our soldiers to the north because that's where the big effort is going to be. And question number two, yes, I'm in touch with our friends in Bethlehem. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how to see this, some of them have left Palestine, the Palestinian territories, and are in the United States now, including our friend Fadi, the shopkeeper from Bethlehem. He's in Texas for half a year now with his family, because again, he's a Christian and he doesn't feel safe with all the Muslims around. So yes, many of the Palestinian Christians have left, and they'll be back, hopefully when the war is over.
Okay, we had one other question that came through here that says, what country do you see as being the largest general threat for Israel?
Well, without a doubt, it is Iran. And what Iran has been doing in the last, I would say, 20 plus years is creating a suffocating belt around Israel. So right now, and I don't know that they actually tell you that on your news, Israel is surrounded by seven frontiers. One is Gaza, two is Lebanon, three is the West Bank, four is the Houthis in Yemen, five is Iran itself, six is the Iranian militias in Iraq, and seven, the Iranian militias in Syria. They have been planning this for years and years to suffocate Israel, and that when the order is given, all of them will attack Israel at the same time. So all these are proxies of Iran. Iran is the main enemy, not only of Israel, but the entire Middle East, and on the broader scale, even a threat to America. They're gaining more and more power, and unfortunately, the American administrations over the last 20 years, instead of taking care of business with Iran in a violent way, try to please them, try to negotiate with them, and while this is happening, they're working on their nuclear facilities. They're very close from achieving a nuclear bomb. If they're going to have a nuclear bomb, have no doubt that they will use it against Israel. And that is why I am sure that Israel will not allow that to happen. Even Netanyahu said yesterday, we'll find the time, the moment, and the environment to eliminate all that. He says, I'm not going to specify more, but Israel will not permit Iran to go nuclear. So to your question, definitely, without a doubt, they're our biggest enemy.
Just as a follow-up to that, and then a question from Pastor Phil. I recall when we were on the bus and we were talking about Netanyahu, he wasn't necessarily your favorite person. In light of everything that's going on right now, do you have a different, view of Netanyahu? I think the answer is yes, but I'm not positive. And then the second question is, how do you see end times Bible prophecies playing out in Israel?
Okay, so about Netanyahu, I did say that he's not my favorite guy for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's been in power for too long. And, in this aspect, I think that we should follow the American system, 2 terms, and that's it. But he's been there, believe it or not, on and off since 96. That is almost 30 years. That's not something you see in many democracies. And so over the years, he started doing things that, he should have been doing. And even though he's very intelligent and very talented and did great things for Israel, I said it's time to go home and have fresh blood. Having said that, now finding ourselves in this situation, there's no doubt that he is the man that we need. If you said to me, Boaz, okay, who would you replace Netanyahu with right now? I would say nobody. Nobody would be able to do what he's doing. Nobody will be able to stand in front of Biden and look in his eyes and said, I'm not going to take this, and I'm going to say the truth to the world. And if you're not supplying weapons, I'm going to say that, and I'm not afraid of you. And that is something that right now Netanyahu is the only one that is able to do that and stand strongly for Israel. So I will not replace him at the moment with nobody else, unless that person to replace him would have been me, but I'm not a candidate. So not going to happen. As for
Not running for president?
As for prophecies, is what I said a few minutes ago, that it was obvious, already thousands of years ago, that this has to end with a war. Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac, the father of the Jewish people. Ishmael, the father of the Muslim people. Isaac being the beloved, son of Abraham. Ishmael, the rejected son of Abraham. And eventually, the clash was inevitable. It's what you're seeing now. And you can see how God protects Israel, how God makes sure that Israel, this tiny little country, a dot on the map, being attacked, like I said, 7 frontiers, and we are still here, and we're not afraid, and we're gonna win the war, not because we're super strong or super smart or anything like that, simply because God is with us. And I'm sure that in the near future, everyone will be exposed to more and more miracles, things that are going to happen in Israel, things that are going to happen to our enemies, and will eventually make them realize you're not fighting against the Jewish people, you're fighting against God Himself. Good luck.
Hmm. That's very powerful. I know you had shared a story regarding driving down the road and some missile fire that had been taken down over your head, and you had pulled alongside this young lady, and you ran out into the field, as I recall the story going, and kind of hunkered down, waiting for the stuff to fall. Is that type of thing still happening over the top of you? I mean, I've seen videos. It looks close, closer than any of us would ever want to see it. But you all are kind of, you seem very used to it and almost confident in a way that it's kind of hard to describe for us because we don't see that type of thing happening. But are you still close to that type of action?
Um, yes and no. I said yes and no because it is happening now in northern Israel. But the thing is that we are at home the whole time. I mean, we don't leave home unless we have to, going to the grocery store or something like that. So when there's a siren that tells us there's a missile attack, which can happen even now as we speak, right away I'm going to run downstairs to the safe room that's in the basement and wait there until we're being told that it's safe enough to go out. What happened to me, the incident that you're talking about that was a few months ago, was terrifying, and that you cannot get used to because I wasn't here. I was in Tel Aviv, and back then Hamas still had the capabilities to launch long range missiles into Tel Aviv, which now they don't have anymore, but back then they did. So I'm on the highway, and all of a sudden this siren, and I'm like, I'm not at home. There's no safe room. Now what? So I just did what everyone else did, stopped the car, in the middle of the highway, ran to the field, not knowing what to do. And this young girl said to me, just follow me, do as I do. And, we just went down on the ground, and all the missiles exploded right above our heads. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm gonna come out of this alive, because it's not the missile that I was afraid of, because I could see the Iron Dome of Israel shooting all these missiles. But what happens then is that all these big pieces of metal fall down to the earth eventually. Nothing stays up in the air. And it takes, 2 inches metal thing that will fall on your head or your back, and you're gone. So that was terrifying. And fortunately, I didn't have anything like that since then because, like I said, most of the time we're close to our safe room.
Boaz, you gave me some images to show. Do you want me to show those now?
Absolutely.
Okay, which ones would you like me to share with everybody?
Doesn't matter. You just start and I'll explain what you're seeing.
Okay, I'm not a Zoom expert, so if this doesn't work, then we're gonna find out real quickly. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yes, what you're seeing here is what Gaza looks like nowadays. These are Israeli soldiers getting from house to house to make sure that there's no terrorists in there. By the way, I just want you to know that there's no any army in the world that does what the Israeli army is doing. Because if this would have been the US Army or the British Army or the French Army, all these homes, you would have bombed them from the air. but we just want to make sure that we're not killing civilians and babies, and we actually risk our soldiers that go into the homes like you see now, just to make sure that they kill the people that are needed to be killed and not civilians, and that is why many of them get killed in these homes and tunnels. And yes, what you're seeing here is also some of the burned homes of October 7, where all the atrocities took place. People lost, their families. People were kidnapped. Some people were burnt alive to a degree where even DNA was not able to be taken from there to identify them. And yeah, this is what their homes look like on October the 7th. You can see that the photos horrific. Okay, here is you see Israeli soldier inside one of the tunnels. Just that you know, the tunnel system that they built under the ground is equivalent in size to the metro in New York City, the subway in New York City. There's hundreds of miles under the ground that they have prepared for 20 years. And many of the confrontations and the battles are taking place also down in the tunnels, where, by the way, many of the hostages are still being held. Stuart, do you have the video that I sent you about Elijah fighting?
I do. You want me to show
Please
that?
show
Or
that.
keep
Yeah,
going with
please.
photos for a sec.
Yeah.
All right, let me see what I can load up.
Yeah, wait. Guys, if you could go back to the cars, go back to the previous photo, please, if you can.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Pause here for a second. Guys, what you're seeing here, these are hundreds of Israeli vehicles that what you're seeing now is exactly what happened to them on that October the 7th during the party. If you remember, there was a party with 4,000 participants, and about 400 of them, young boys and girls, were butchered by Hezbollah terrorists. And not only they killed them, they destroyed and burned their cars completely. These are the cars. This is what they look like at the end of that day. So what we did, we gathered all the vehicles together into a memorial site. When you guys come to Israel, I'm going to take you there and show you what you're seeing in the pictures. All these cars where people lost their lives and were burned completely, they're all gathered together in a site in the south of Israel where people can always see that and remember. Here you can see a soldier with a guy next to him, and here's a soldier getting into one of the tunnels to put explosives in there in order to bomb it. There you go.
You want me to try and cue
That's
up the
what you
video for you?
Yeah, there's terrorists inside these tunnels. So what he's doing is putting grenades in there to make sure that it explodes everyone that's in there.
All right, would you want me to show the video now?
Yeah, please.
Do you want to introduce it or you just want me to run it?
Yes. What you're going to see in the video, guys, is exactly what I told you a couple of minutes ago, that Israeli soldiers are risking their lives getting into the homes, making sure that they're minimizing the chances of killing civilians. What you're going to see in this video is the unit of my son, Elijah. That's from a month and a half ago when he was still in the army. And you're going to see the Israeli soldiers getting into this room. They're talking in Hebrew, of course. What they're saying is, shoot into the bathrooms and we'll see if there's anyone there. And the commander shoots to the bathroom, and then he wants to look and see what's in there when massive fire is being fired at him. God knows how he wasn't injured. And then you see an Israeli soldier, you don't see him, but you see him firing back to make sure that his friends are not being injured. This guy firing is my son, Elijah. And everything that you're going to see in this video is being taken from the GoPro camera of Elijah. So go ahead. I can't see anything. I can only hear it.
All right, hold on one moment. Technical difficulties. Takes me a second to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, go ahead, no problem.
I'm not a expert at this kind of thing. All right. I'm gonna run it,
Yes.
but here we go.
Yeah.
כוסות קפה שבאו להכין.
תן כדור לשירותים, סבבה? סבבה?
This is my son's commander.
אחי, היו פה לפני דקה כאילו.
כן, כן, יש פה כוסות, אחי.
אז הם כזה, יש פה חתול על הספה.
Look what's gonna happen now.
בואו ניקח את זה.
This guy shooting now is my son. This is Elijah. See, it looks like, you know, Rambo or Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but folks, this is no movie. This is real life. And you can see what's happening in Gaza every day, all day. The fightings are face to face. The fightings are intense, as you see. The commander that was the one that was nearly shot, the bullets were like less than half an inch from him. And eventually all the terrorists there were killed. But these are 18, 19-year-old kids who say, we know we're risking our lives. We know that there's a good chance we're not coming back home, but we don't have another home. And if we don't do it, who's gonna do it? I remember talking to Elijah, and he said, Dad, I'm only 21, but you know, we need to do it. And I know every day that it may be my last day, and I haven't seen almost anything in life yet. I want to have a girlfriend. I want to marry. I want to have a family. I want to travel. But above everything, I know that I want to be like you because you served in the army. And I want to be like Grandpa, who fought in 67 and 73, because if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for us. So they have such a high motivation, and they're such amazing soldiers. And there's just, you know, I wouldn't say that there's no fear, but you put the fear aside and you go and you do things like that. And, you know, we just admire them. Since the war in Gaza started, we lost 310 soldiers. During the atrocities of October the 7th, we lost 1,200 civilians and about 300 soldiers. So combined, about 600 and some soldiers, you know, young soldiers, 600 families in Israel that have lost, you know, a child, a father, brother, uncle, cousin. I myself had to go. Well, I didn't have to. I went to a few funerals of friends who served with me, and their child, you know, was killed in Gaza. And tell you what, it's heartbreaking. And when Elijah was in Gaza, I can tell you that I didn't sleep even one night. I mean, I tried to grab some sleep during the day, but I did not sleep at night because the thing that horrified me more than anything else is the nightmare of every Israeli parent that you will go to sleep and then at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or 5 a.m., there's going to be someone knocking on your door. And if that happens in Israel, there's not too many options. It's not your neighbor asking for cheese or milk or anything. You know exactly what that means. And I said, if that's my destiny, and if God forbids, that's what's waiting for me, I'd rather be awake with my coffee, seeing the soldiers coming to my house, and not someone waking me up to this horrific news. So also on a personal level, these are very, very challenging times to all of us here in Israel.
Well, we're really sorry for what's going on there. Is Elijah still in active duty? I heard he completed his service, correct?
Yeah, like I said, he completed that, and he 3 days ago flew to India with a few friends just for a few weeks, but he needs to come back because his unit already notified him that he'll be called up as soon as, you know, the Lebanon campaign is gonna start. And I just want you to know if and when Lebanon starts, it's going to be a lot worse than Gaza because Hezbollah is a lot stronger than Hamas. Hezbollah, our estimation is that they have about 200,000 missiles, short range, long range. So all of Israel will be within their range. But again, we trust the God of Israel. He'll know what to do. He'll know how to protect us. He will know how to provide wisdom to our generals in the army, to Netanyahu, to everyone else. And we know that we're going to prevail. A, we have no option. B, God is with us.
Amen. Is Ithamar also serving in the reserves, or how does that work?
Itamar was in the 10 Corps, but Itamar, and I may have told you that when you were in Israel, he had a rare disease, during his service that basically ruined his hip. And because of that, he was dismissed from the army after about 1 year. He went through a very complicated surgery. And even though he's only 26, he's going to have a hip replacement very soon. So the army said, we don't need you. You can't possibly be of any help to us.
Sure.
So he was dismissed, and they're not going to call him up.
Okay. We had another question. Phil asked this question: what is the number of Israeli soldiers killed? You already answered that, but the true number of Gaza civilians killed.
So, like I said, about 600 Israeli soldiers were killed, 1,200 civilians were killed, and in Gaza, the numbers, the true numbers are 20,000 Hamas terrorists that were killed, and about 12 to 15,000 civilians that were killed. Yes, it sounds like a big number, but just that the ratio between terrorists and civilians is the lowest in any battle ever, meaning that when America or Britain engaged battles in different parts of the world, there were many more civilians per one terrorist that were killed, mainly because of the big bombings from the air versus what we're doing, which I showed you a few minutes ago, that most times we get from house to house and fight this way to minimize the damage on civilians. But hey, when you're fighting in a place like Gaza, which is the most dense place in the world, 2.5 million people living in an area that's so small and so tiny, when terrorists are hiding inside of homes of people, when terrorists having people as their human shield, it's simply inevitable that also civilians will be killed.
Sure, understandably. Rob asked this question: is the Iron Dome still the premier defense system for the bulk of the enemy missile efforts? And does this also handle potential drone efforts from Hezbollah?
So the answer is yes and yes, but it's not only the Iron Dome. We have different missiles for different ranges, meaning that the Iron Dome, and I don't want to give too much information because it's classified, but I'll just say in general, the Iron Dome is good for a certain range. But for instance, when Iran 2 months ago attacked Israel with also long-range missiles, we used the Arrow. So we have Arrow, we have Iron Dome, and we have two more type of missiles for different ranges. And that is how we basically protect the entire, skies of Israel with our defense system. Obviously, it is not 100%. So
Sure.
that is why every now and then there's a missile or a few missiles that penetrate the Iron Dome, like the experience that I had the other day in Tel Aviv, which I explained. But 95% of all missiles are being targeted and shot by the Iron Dome and the other missiles. Yeah.
What's going to happen to Gaza after the conflict ends? I mean, assuming that you guys prevail, which it seems like you're going to, what's going to happen with the Gaza Strip? Is it going to go back to Palestinian control? Is the UN going to try and step in? What is Israel going to take control of that? How's that going to work? Is there an idea yet?
This is an amazing question. It's a great question. And unfortunately, I have a poor answer. Nobody knows.
Okay.
And when I say nobody knows, even Netanyahu was asked yesterday, same very question on his interview. And what he said, first of all, whatever happens, we have to make sure that Hamas is no longer there. And then if you listen carefully to what he said, it sounded like Israel will control Gaza for a little while, just to make sure that there's no more nests of terrorists in Gaza. And then we will be glad to hand it over to a Palestinian, control, but we need to make sure that these are not Palestinians that are fanatic, crazy people, because otherwise it's going to start all over again. So
Sure.
it's got to be an entity that may even include Arab countries from the area sending their representatives to control Gaza. And eventually, after years, when things will be quiet and good, then it will be handed over completely to the Palestinian Authority. This is the idea, but again, we don't know. I don't think that anyone knows at this point. Netanyahu said, we have to take it one step at a time. We got to win the war first, and then we'll worry about it.
All right. Phil asked this question. What's the main thing you would like people in the U.S. to know about the situation, and how can we pray for Israel?
You can definitely pray for Israel on a few levels. Level number one is that God will keep providing Netanyahu with wisdom to do the right thing, to not cave under international pressure, not the UN, not Biden and Obama pressure, to do what's good and what's right for Israel. I want to remind you that unlike the Arab countries around us, we cannot afford losing a war. If we lose one war, I'm not going to be here anymore. My family will not be here. And Israel, the Holy Land, is going to be a Muslim place. So you need to pray for that. And then on personal levels with people like myself, we are very patriotic to our country, to Israel. We are willing to pay the ultimate price by sending our kids, to war. You just saw the video 2 minutes ago. But at the same time, the economy here in Israel is really bad. It's really bad because the government is now spending hundreds of billions on defense, and people are not being paid. I'm talking about self-employed, people who have companies like myself.
Sure.
About 30% of tour operations in Israel already went bankrupt, and they don't exist anymore. Restaurants, buses, all the circles of tourism, many of them are gone. We're still waiting on compensation for the government for 9 months. And what they're telling us is stand in line, because hundreds of thousands of families are still waiting. We need to do things at home that right now we cannot afford, but we need to do them. For instance, we were just told now that the door to the safe room is not a good one and we have to replace it. And we're like, why is it not good? It was supposed to protect us. And the answer, yes, because initially it was designed to protect you from a missile attack. But what happens with the atrocities of October the 7th, we realize that the missiles are not the big threat. The big threat is terrorists invading into your house and killing you in your house. So now you have to change a whole mechanism of having a door that once you're in the safe room, you can lock it from the inside and no one can open it from the outside. Well, this door alone is $5,000. So there's all kind of things, all kind of challenges that, we're facing right now. We're doing our best, to survive in these pretty difficult circumstances. But again, these are all things that you can pray for, and hopefully, things will be over soon and that everything will slowly be restored and we'll get back on track. and you folks will be able to come and visit Israel and see the beauty of the Holy Land as it always been.
So somebody asked, how's your family surviving financially with no tour groups? I think you've sort of covered that, but I don't know what more you'd like to say about that.
Yeah, well, we had the last group in Israel because when the war started, we had the group that arrived in Israel on that same day. So we actually had the privilege to tour Israel with a group from North Carolina for 10 days with nobody else in Israel. We were the only ones. But when they left, that was the end of it. And other than one group that we were able to send over to Greece a month ago, a group of students from Atlanta, Georgia, we had, zero income. We still have a house and a mortgage and 3 children and all the commitments that we have. And with zero income, that's not easy. That's not easy at all. And there's not even any bank near us because I was thinking about perhaps robbing a bank or something. But no, being serious now, it's a big challenge, and there too we're praying. Every day we pray that somehow God will provide, that things will happen, things will change. But I will not lie to you. I have more gray hair than last time Stuart saw me, and part of it is also financially. So.
And to that end, if you would like to help out the Shalgi's family, you can contribute to them. Boaz told me this when we were talking via text. You can, he said the best way to do that would be for us to collect the money and then we can send it to them. So if you go to my church, you could contribute to my church and we'll send those funds out to Boaz. And then if you go to Phil's church, the same. If you go to Cool Community and Rob's church, then you could maybe you guys can collect those funds for him and then wire them the money. So we want to support our friends over there. The Bible tells us that we are to the God blesses those who bless Israel. He curses those who curse Israel. Want to not just support you with our prayers, but financially if we have the opportunity. And I know most of the people on this call are people who've been there with you and they love you and obviously are just heartbroken over what's been going on lately. And I'm sure some would definitely open up their wallets or their checkbook to help you out. So we don't want to just love in word, but in deed as well.
First of all, I want to say that I appreciate that a lot. For all my life, I help people, and anyone that I could help financially, I always did that. I always donated money, and I never thought that I'll be in a situation one day when I'll need some help. I always, said that God blesses people with the ability to help others, which I always did. But again, you never know how things work out, and all of a sudden I find myself, on the other side of it. So just that, this is something that pains me. I was not in a situation that I thought that a day like that will come. But at the same time, I can tell you that if you're on the side that can help and that does and don't need help, then God is really blessing you. And so again, thank you so much, and God bless you, and you'll be doing great things for our family with anything that you give, because we need that desperately.
Sure. Anybody else got another question for Boaz before we let him go and start his day?
If not, sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I visited Israel multiple times, and I noticed that Israel's philosophy is not trying to catch you in a crime, but trying to prevent it. The police cars have their lights going on all the time, so you know where they're at. And I also got the idea that as far as attacking Israel, the idea there to prevent is if you kill one of us, the response is going to be overwhelming, right? And so therefore that also creates a sense of prevention. But with Hamas, they don't care about civilian deaths. It just seems like to me. And I'm wondering if this is giving Israel pause after this war is over as to how they want to go and prevent this from the future. Because frankly, if some country or terrorist group attacks you and they don't care what your response is and how many civilians die, then it seems to me like this idea of being able to prevent by having an overwhelming response, it just leaves you in a precarious position. I'd love to know what you think about that.
Thank you so much for the question. And Stuart, I'm serious with what I'm saying now. If in the near future you would like to arrange another Zoom lecture, it will be exactly on what our friend asked now, because I'm going to give it in a nutshell, but this question requires an hour lecture. It's an amazing question, and like I said, I'll just give you the nutshell answer. Hamas and Hezbollah and fanatic Muslims, they don't care about humans' lives. The other way around. They say the more people die, the more civilians die, the more people will go to heaven. They're talking about themselves. And the problem is what happens when a civilized culture is being attacked by barbarians. The barbarians say to us, you adore life, we adore death. You want to live, we want to die. When that is the equation, you cannot win, because no matter how many you kill on the other side, they couldn't care less. So again, very quickly, the way to fight that is to claim a prize from the barbarians, because even though they don't care about life, there's always something that they do care about. And in this case, the one thing only that pains the Muslims is when you take land from them. People don't care if you kill their 5 children and their wife, and doesn't matter to them. But if you take 1 inch of their land in Gaza or the West Bank, that's what destroys them. And that is why experts in Israel say the solution is, whenever there's a big terror attack in Israel, to get into the West Bank or to Gaza and take half a mile from them. If this continues to take another mile, this is the only thing that pains them. And if you want to fight terrorism with people who don't care about their own lives, about their families' lives, you need to find what pains them and do that. Think of Achilles from the Greek mythology, the guy that was invincible. You could have shot 100 arrows to his head and chest and back, but that will not do anything to him. But his sensitivity was his ankle. 1 shot to the ankle and he's gone. So even people like that have their weak spot, and you need to make sure that you're pressing on that button, because if you don't do that, nothing else would matter. As far as Hamas leader is concerned, you can kill 1 million Palestinians today. He could not care less. But if you take 1 square mile from him, you're going to kill him. That's what's going to do the job. And that is why many Israelis now say, not only we're going to get to Gaza and take care of business, we have to settle places in Gaza, because once you take land from them, that's going to be the solution. But like I said, this is a lecture for another day.
Boaz,
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Boaz, is that because when you take their land, they see that as you have conquered Allah's territory? Is that how they see it?
Exactly. As far as fanatic Islam, there's no countries in the Middle East. When you talk to ISIS, to Hamas, they don't care about Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia. To them, there's no names. To them, this is all Islamic land. The entire Middle East is Islamic land. To them, all these different names mean nothing. This all belongs to Allah. This all belongs to the Muslims. And that is why this Jewish island in here in the Middle East, to them is like something that doesn't belong here. And that is why they want to get rid of us. Now, here, not only they get rid of us, we keep taking territories from them, and that is something that they cannot cope with. That is the only thing that hurts them. And maybe because of that, that's going to be the solution. And back to Phil's question from a few minutes ago about biblical prophecies, when you came on a tour to Israel, I told you, read Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 to 5, see what God has promised his people as for the size of the Holy Land, the Promised Land, and that extends to the whole area around here. And maybe that's what's starting to be created now, that we will eventually get back to the biblical territories that God has promised us. And that is why they're so terrified about it.
Do you think that goes back to the book of Genesis and Isaac and Ishmael's rivalry and how God has promised the
That's where it all
Israelites?
started, without a doubt.
All right.
That's where it all started.
I figured I knew
Yeah.
the answer. I was just going to ask it. We had another question. Phil asked, when would you suggest we bring our next tour group? I know that's going to be a little bit harder to answer, but I'll throw it out.
Yeah, you know, even though we are desperate for finance, I will never, ever put anyone in risk and say, hey, come to Israel just because, you know, I want to make some income. No, right now, it's not a time to come to Israel. The good news is that whenever this stops, it's going to be quiet for a long, long time. I mean, Gaza will take years to be restored. And I'm sure same thing with Lebanon once that's going to start. But I do say to you, start considering what other churches started doing with us. And that is, while it's not possible or recommended to come to Israel, we're doing fantastic tours of the journeys of Paul in Greece and Ephesus. So, you know, if that is something that your churches would like to do, we can send you itineraries and dates for next year that you'll decide. And that would be a great tour. Like I said, we just came back a few weeks ago from a tour in Greece. Everyone was so happy. So it's not Israel, it's not the Holy Land, but it's still a good biblical tour. So that's one alternative. And if not that, we'll let you know when it's safe enough to come to Israel.
And you're leading those tours?
Yes, I'm leading those tours, yes.
Okay. And you have one
Yeah.
planned coming up, or is that just
Well, we have about
request?
we have two scheduled for next year. There's a couple of other pastors that are now looking into it.
Yep.
And the season to go there is between April and November. So you have a good range of, you know, space to put that together.
Good. How are we doing on time? You got any more questions you want to answer, or are you about finished?
All I'll say is that, again, these are challenging times. For those of you who are friends of mine on Facebook, feel free to ask me questions on Messenger or even via email. And the reason I say that is that what you see on the news is often so far away from reality, so far away from the truth. When I was in Greece a few weeks ago, in the evenings, I will turn on the TV and they would have BBC and CNN over there. And I'm seeing that and I'm saying, what in the world are they talking about? So again, if you want to have the truth, the real accurate information, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I promise I'll always respond and always keep you updated with the true information coming from Israel.
Boaz, what would you say is probably the biggest misconception between what we see in the news and what you're seeing there on the ground?
The fact that Israel is killing civilians, that Israel is focusing on killing civilians, that Netanyahu doesn't stop the war because it serves him in a political way. And that is just so annoying to say about Netanyahu, who lost his own brother in the Entebbe operation 40-some years ago, that he is sending soldiers to their death just because that serves his interests. I mean, that makes me sick just to hear that,
Sure.
you know, and to hear Biden saying we're sending all the support and all the aid to Israel, and we know it's not true. And Netanyahu says, well, that's a lie. We're not receiving almost anything, and we need all these weapons and ammunition to come here. There's all kind of things that they simply lie straight into your face, you know, about what's happening here. And like I said, you want to know the truth? First of all, follow what I post on Facebook, because I do that almost on a daily basis. And B, feel free to email me, to reach out to me. And at any given time, I'll tell you exactly what's going on here. And another thing, by the way, speaking about misconception, they're saying that there's starvation in Gaza. Well, not only there's no starvation in Gaza, they made a research now and said that in average, every Palestinian receives 3,300 calories a day. So that doesn't mean they consume all that, but that is the amount of aid that gets into the Gaza. So just that you understand, there's a lot of things that your media tells you that is not only far from the truth, it's an absolute lie.
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, nothing. I'm just amazed. I'm absolutely amazed at all that's happening over there.
You know, let me say just one last thing before we go. For years and years, I've been thinking to myself, what is anti-Semitism? And I know that anti-Semitism is hating the Jewish people because they're Jews. But I did a lot of research over the years, and I said, this is not enough. There's got to be something deeper than that to understand where this hatred comes from. And I believe that I found the answer to that. I woke up about a month ago, and it was like revelation that God spoke to me and gave me the answer. And the answer to anti-Semitism, part of the classic anti-Semitism that started, you know, with Jews being blamed for the crucifixion of Jesus and other things. But modern anti-Semitism is that people expect the Jews things that they don't expect from anyone else, even from themselves. In other words, they're saying to the Jewish people, you have the Torah, you have the Bible, you have all these values that are in the Bible that you Jewish people say that you're committed to them. Well, you're committed to them, but we're not. Not only we're not, the way we judge you is the way you judge yourself, which means that you Jewish people say, don't murder, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that. Well, don't do it. And if we think that you're violating any of that, then we will go after you. Now, the fact that we do it doesn't matter, because we never promised that we will not do it. So it becomes a double standard. What Israel, or the way Israel is being inspected, is with a magnifying glass that no other nation in the world is being inspected. And the proof to that is that the UN has more accusation towards Israel. Listen to what I'm saying. More accusation towards Israel than North Korea, Russia, China, and Iran combined. How in the world can that even be possible? Israel is the only democracy over here. But if you ask the UN, Israel is committing more crimes than all of these crazy countries put together. Why? Because nobody cares what they're doing. Everybody cares about what we're doing. Unfortunately, My wife's sister, she has 3 sisters. Her oldest sister is anti-Semitic. Now she says, no, I'm not. And I say to my wife, tell her, yes, you are. And the proof to that is, tell her, why are you so obsessed with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? I mean, you live in Sweden. Why aren't you obsessed with what the Chinese are doing to Taiwan? Why aren't you obsessed with what the Egyptian Muslims are doing to the Christian Coptics? Why aren't you obsessed with what the Turks do to the Armenians 100 years ago when they killed 1.5 million of them? Why aren't you obsessed with any other conflict in the world, but only with the Israeli-Arab conflict? Because you're anti-Semitic, because you don't care about people being killed around the world. You care only when people are being killed by Jewish people. And that's part of the modern anti-Semitism. Jewish people, according to the anti-Semites, have the right to be victims. They have the right to be underdogs. People loved us after the Holocaust. People loved us the first day of the atrocities in Gaza because we were the underdog. But as soon as the Jews raise their fist and go fight, that's when people hate us.
You're absolutely hit the nail on the head. I mean, there is a total double standard, and it's just hypocrisy the way that they treat Israel as opposed to they treat other nations, and even their own expectations of their own nations. Can I ask you one last one? You got one? I got one. I got many more loaded. I'll wear you out, man. You just tell me when to quit. The cherry on the Sunday to this whole thing, and the anti-Semitism that's been going on to me, and I'm just curious how the Jewish people have reacted, is the International Criminal Court saying they want to arrest Netanyahu and prosecute him. Do they pay any attention to that? Because I don't think Americans really care or pay attention at all. But I'm sure, maybe you guys have a different perspective on that.
Yeah, by us it's different because you guys are the superpower of the world and nobody will dare saying something like that to Biden. I mean, come on, who's gonna arrest the American president? Not gonna happen.
Sure.
But Israel is not America, and they will arrest Netanyahu if Netanyahu travels into one of these European countries. So
Sure.
yes, we take it very seriously. And what you just mentioned is part of what I said. I mean, we find ourselves being the only island of sanity in the entire Middle East, the only country that is a real democracy. I mean, you've been here many times, you know that. And after our women were raped and our children were butchered and our men were killed and communities were destroyed, after all that, we find ourselves being accused in the court of law. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. And again, that is pure anti-Semitism. There's no other way to describe that.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, I know they did call for the same thing for the leader of Hamas, but it doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, the fact that they put Netanyahu and the leader of Hamas in the same basket says everything.
yeah, it's laughable. It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll let you go, and unless you're a glutton for punishment and you want us to line up some more questions for you. But
Well, yeah, give me one more and we'll end it because yes, in a few minutes I do need to go.
okay. I guess the $1 million question is, how can we pray for the Israelis and the Jewish people right now? What's the number one prayer request, other than obviously, for your troops to be safe and things like that?
As Americans, I want you to pray for your administration, that God will find a way to give the wisdom, that Biden and everyone else will understand who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. And even if they decide to not help Israel a great deal, at least don't stop us from doing what we need to do. Because while for Biden is about winning the elections, for us is about survival, which is a lot, more important. Pray for that. Pray for our young soldiers. Pray for the families in Israel that lost someone or even more than one person in their families, for all the widows, for all the orphans. They just said that 30 Israeli women gave birth now to children that were born orphans, that the father is already dead and the child was born right after that. Safety for the people in the south, for people like us in the north, and for this whole crazy reality to be over soon, that we can restore our lives back, get our children back, get our economy back, and get everything back on track. Basically, that's it.
Well, I hope you know we love you. We
Mhm.
care for your family. We'll be praying for definitely for your family, and we can definitely pray for our own president because he needs it. So we appreciate your time, Boaz. And you know, if anybody does want to contribute anything to Boaz's family, you can do so through any one of those three churches, my church, Rob's church, Phil's church, any one of those, and we'd be happy to pass on the funds to you if we can be of any financial assistance.
Thank you so much, Stuart. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.
All right, my brother.
Thanks,
Okay.
Boaz.
God bless.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Boaz.
Thank you.